Can you come to work in a negligee? No. How about boxers if you're a man? No. Okay, so there's some...
What about a short skirt?
Well, this is the thing. The devil's in the bloody details. You can't come to work naked. You can't come to work in boxer shorts. You can come to work in a suit. Okay, so the line is somewhere between boxers and suit. Where exactly is the line? Exactly.
Can a man wear shorts?
Well,
if he can't,
look,
why can a woman wear a dress?
The way that men... In professional organizations, the way that men solved this problem was that everyone wore a uniform. And a uniform makes you uniform. That's why you wear it. And the uniform is the suit. And it's a derivation of a military garb. And so the idea was, well, we want to get rid of excess diversity, right, in clothing. Wear your damn suit. Then we know you're playing the game and we don't have to be distracted by what you're wearing.
Why are weak men such a problem?
Well, weak people are a problem. And I don't mean physically weak. I mean cowardly, let's say, and deceitful, because I'm thinking it more in terms of moral weakness. Well, there's a variety of reasons. First of all, if you can't support your own weight, let's say, then someone else has to do it. And that's not good. And then if you don't pick a forthright and useful and noble pathway through life, then you'll become bitter and too hurt by the tragedy of existence. And then you tend to seek your revenge wherever you can get it. And that's not good. So it's a mistake on all fronts. It's not good for you. It's not good for your family. It's not good for the community. It's certainly not a good medium to long-term strategy because life is very, very difficult and you have to be prepared for that.
The way you talk about religion is that at the end of all these conversations, I'm still not sure what you believe on that point, frankly.
Well, I don't know why you would expect to be sure about what someone believes. How do you think that any one of you are capable of fully articulating what you believe? You certainly aren't. You are not. That's completely ridiculous. You're not transparent to yourself by any stretch of the imagination. You act out all sorts of things that you can't articulate. If you look, let's go all cognitive neuroscience on this, shall we? 99% of your processing is unconscious. You're not capable of articulating yourselves. If you were, you'd be omniscient. Okay, but don't give me any nonsense about that.
But that is a...
In your 12 Rules for Life, you speak very fondly of the influence of Alexander Solzhenitsyn during your formative years as a student, and you also use several examples from the novels of Fyodor Dostoevsky to illustrate certain points about psychology. So I was just wondering, is there any other way that Russian culture history has left a mark on your ideas?
Well, they aren't the only Russian thinkers who influenced me. I read a lot of Tolstoy, including The Kingdom of God is Within You. Bulgakov, whose Master and Margarita is, I don't even know what to say about that book. I've read it 3 times and I think I could read it another 10 times. It's an amazing tour de force. I certainly don't understand it. It's like a complex dream. I've collected Russian Soviet art, era art for a long time. I got very interested in constructivist art and suprematist art, and that there was a flowering of artistic productivity in the early stages of the Soviet Revolution, which was pretty much clamped down on immediately by Stalin in the 1930s.
Now let's talk about something else that builds on your premise. This whole father-daughter dance that are being canceled around the country because of gender guidelines. Is there a problem with that?
Well, the problem with that is self-evident, but it's part of this absolute onslaught by the radical leftists on the fundamental normative structures of our culture. And if you're going to cancel everything that's triggering to everyone, then you're going to cancel everything altogether, because there isn't a single thing that anyone can ever say or do that isn't going to offend someone. And the idea that this is being done so that certain people's feelings won't be hurt, I think, is absolutely absurd. It's not compassion and care that's driving this. It's the desire to put forward a very pernicious ideology. And it's being very, very successful in its application. And it's really appalling that we're bending over backwards to do their bidding without question, under the name of compassion. Let's play a trading game, okay? I'm going to give you $100 and you can offer some of it to your partner in the game. But the rule is if she says no, you don't get anything and neither does she. And you only get to make one offer. So, okay, here's your $100. How much are you going to offer her? 40. Okay, would you take 40? Okay, now that's interesting.
Wow.
Okay, very good. That's perfect. Okay, so first of all, the classic economist would say, you should offer her $1. Why? Because she might as well take $1 because she gets $1. And you want to maximize your own return. So you get $99. It's like, what happens when you do that? What happens is that is never what people do. They usually offer approximately 50%.
and if they don't, then the other person refuses.
Yeah.
Now, then you might think, well, let's say you matched a rich person and a poor person, and you said, okay, give the rich person 100, and they offer the poor person $1. What does the poor person say? You think, well, yeah, I need the dollars. They say, no, go to hell. I'm not doing it. And they're more likely, the poor person is more likely to refuse the lower offer than a rich person is.
There's only two reasons that men and women differ. One is cultural, and the other is biological. And if you minimize the cultural differences, you maximize the biological differences. So I know everyone's shocked when they hear this. This isn't shocking news. People have known this in the scientific community for at least 25 years. And it's been replicated in the last month 3 times in 3 separate samples, including in Science, which is the world's greatest scientific magazine by a large margin. And it isn't a small effect, it's a huge effect.
But, excuse me, what does it mean? Does it mean that Scandinavian men and women are having more difficulties meeting each other, talking to each other than other places?
No, not necessarily, but it does mean that there are reasons for differences in participation rates in different occupations that aren't a consequence of socialization.
Well, now they're trying to shut down the bloody farmers. It's like, what the hell's going on here? We actually need food, especially poor starving people. Remember them? Socialists, aren't those the people that you're supposed to be on the side of? Well, all you're doing with your idiot utopian globalism and your environmental apocalypse and your willingness to identify yourself as part of the moral elite because you care about the planet is dooming, well, Michael thinks, 1 billion people to starvation. So what the hell? How is that moral? As soon as you make people poor, you make the environment worse. Period. The end. Not just a little bit worse, way worse, radically worse. Just wait till you see what happens to Sri Lanka on the sustainable biological front. I often ask undergraduates how many hours a day you waste or how many hours a week you waste. And the classic answer is something like 4 to 6 hours a day. You know, inefficient studying, watching things on YouTube that not only do you not want to watch, that you don't even care about, that make you feel horrible about watching after you're done. That's probably 4 hours right there. Now, you think, well, that's 25 hours a week. It's 100 hours a month. That's 2.5 full work weeks. It's half a year of work weeks per year. And if your time is worth $20 an hour, which is a radical underestimate, it's probably more like 50 if you think about it in terms of deferred wages. If you're wasting 20 hours a week, you're wasting $50,000 a year. And you are doing that right now. And it's because you're young, wasting $50,000 a year is a way bigger catastrophe than it would be for me to waste it, because I'm not going to last nearly as long. And so if your life isn't everything it could be, you could ask yourself, well, what would happen if you just stopped wasting the opportunities that are in front of you?
I think the biggest danger here, and it's just made my jaw drop over the last couple of weeks thinking about it, is the fact that the credit card companies are now taking it upon themselves to potentially police the activities of their users. It's like, my God, is that really? I just can't believe that any sensible person would think that through and then want to live in a society where your spending habits are being monitored by the company that basically produces your money. I can't think of anything more totalitarian than that.
We were up there in the restaurant and the place was just buzzing, and then Trump came in and you could just feel the energy, the electric energy, and I thought, this is not good. This is too much, man. This is too much for anybody to bear. And he's a very strange person in that category, I would say, because he's not just famous for being president, which is already something that makes you pretty damn famous, but he was really famous as a businessman before that. But then he got even more famous as a TV celebrity for like 15 years. That's a lot of fame, man. And when that much fame surrounds you, your life is very weird. And the probability that people are going to respond to you in the normal way that helps keep you sane is very low. Especially maybe if you're also an intimidating person to begin with a bit of a proclivity, let's say, towards disagreeableness. Because maybe then you chase away the people who would have enough sense to tell you when you go a little bit too far.
Often when people are embittered and resentful and feel like they're victims, it's because really awful things have happened to them. Now, not always, but often. And so then the question is, well, if you're in a situation and something really awful is happened to you or has happened to you, then, well, why shouldn't you feel like a victim? And is there a better alternative? Thousands have come before you and they did just fine. So quit your complaining. And it's not because you have nothing to complain about. That's not the case. It's that that's not the right approach. The fact is, and this is such an optimistic fact, as well as a judgment in some sense, the fact is that if someone else can do it, so can you. And that's something, right? If you're reading about the great heroes in history, people who are in these terrible situations, and you see someone rise to the occasion, and then you can say, well, that was a person who did that, and I'm a person, and so maybe I have that capacity too, even though I don't know how to approach it.
And the idea that the people at the top are oppressive patriarchs and that they've garnered all their status, let's say, authority and so-called power as a consequence of theft and pillage is completely reprehensible idea. In a functional society like Australia and like most of the Western world, most of the men who are in so-called positions of power are highly competent and generally as good a people as you could hope to find. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, but that doesn't mean it's the fundamental motivating force of all mankind. It's certainly no lens through which to look at history. Now, this is all a form of idiotic ideological delusion driven by people who are too dopey to know that Karl Marx was a mass murderer and a charlatan. And we are like neck deep in this foolishness everywhere in the West.
Little children pay you back immensely if you have a good relationship with them, you know, if you're on their side and encourage them, because they're an unconditional source of joy and love. As you get older, your family you've produced becomes more and more important, you know. So we teach young women in particular that the fundamental goal of their life is going to be their career. And, you know, first of all, most people don't have careers, they have jobs. And those are very different things. But you're not a very happy camper, so to speak, if you're 45 and you have no one, and it doesn't go upwards after that, so don't miss it.
I think that the women, the cabinet women, the cabinet members who took their cabinet positions who were women in the Trudeau federal government should be ashamed of themselves for the rest of their life for allowing themselves to be elevated to a position of power based fundamentally on their genitalia. There's no excuse for it. If they had an ounce of pride, they would have rejected it and said, you pick the most competent people. That's your job. It's 2015, and so we have 50% women. It's like, no, these are important positions. We appoint the people who are the most competent for the job, and we do it independently of their fundamental biological nature. That's the whole point of an egalitarian society.
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
A very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper-successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.